Chapter 19. Inconvenience. In a flash, 3 days had already passed. Although the 3 days were not long, it still allowed Gian Chen to become more accustomed to the lifestyle and environment in Carath Academy. Within these 3 days, other than Gian Chen participating in classes on the first day, he had spent his time on the other 2 days either cultivating in his room or wandering around the library. Due to the fact that the curriculum taught by the teachers of the academy revolved around how one should behave, what should be done in a dangerous situation, and a few skills one would need in order to survive out in the areas outside the cities. Jian Chen felt that these things weren't even worth learning. He was a wanderer in his previous life. With his experience, he could teach those teachers how the class should be taught. With his battle experience and ability to live wherever in the world, he could teach both the teachers and the students by himself. As the teacher's experience with battle was not at all extensive, it could not even be compared to Gian Chen's. The next morning, Jian Chen put on the academy uniform and headed straight for the library after eating a meal at the dining hall. The academy was very lax about their classes. If one wanted to attend, then they could attend. If one didn't want to attend, then that was no problem either. After all, most of the nobles and children of rich families had already been tutored since young, so they had knowledge that could rival some of the teachers, but they lacked the experience. Therefore, the classes were pretty much only for the commoners to learn from. It was very rare that a noble would attend a class, and if they did, then it was a minor noble. Arriving at the first level of the library, Jian Chen took a few books and began to eagerly read them at a table in the reading area. Carath Academy's library was expansive, and there was a generous amount of books on almost every subject. It was vastly superior to the library back in Changyang Mansion, and Jian Chen could find many books that couldn't be found back at home, helping him understand the world to a better extent. Right now, the book in Jian Chen's hands was an introduction book to all of the magical beasts that could be found in the Tianyuan continent. There were many different kinds of magical beasts. No matter if the beast could walk or fly, the amount of species amounted to over 1,000. The book even mentioned that there were still many magical beasts left undiscovered, and for the magical beasts that didn't live within the deep abyss of the mountain range of magical beasts, then they lived in the endless ocean. That was an area that even the strongest of people had trouble traveling to. As Gian Chen immersed himself in studying, a 16-17-year-old female student suddenly came walking through the doors. The female was extraordinarily pretty, and she also wore the academy uniform. Her long and beautiful hair was carefully braided into tiny ponytails, causing her face to look even more gorgeous. But on her face was an extremely haughty expression. One look at her would reveal that she was from a noble family. This female was actually Kad Kuli of the Kad clan. Kad Kuli entered the library and walked over to the bookshelf before casually walking on over the reading area with a book in hand. She glanced over at the other students reading there, but the moment her eyes swept over to the area with the tables, she saw the back of Gian Chen, causing her to immediately stop where she was and stand there in surprise. Kad Kuli focused onto Jian Chen's back, the light in her eyes never ceasing to flicker with emotion. Just thinking about how, a few days ago, she had been grabbed by the leg and casually thrown out of the arena without regard to her well-being, caused her to feel fury within herself. To her, that event was an unforgettable humiliation. The memory caused her face to boil over in anger before she snorted. No longer in the mood to read a book, she tossed it aside and stamped out of the library while gnashing at her teeth. "Changyang Xiangtian, I'll definitely show you one day." But Jian Chen did not notice Kad Kuli at all, since he was completely focused on the book he was reading. No one would dare cause trouble in the library, so Jian Chen didn't bother keeping his guard up in it. After Kad Kuli left the library, she immediately found her second brother, Kad Leang, who was practicing his martial arts alone in the forest. Seeing Kad Kuli walk over, Kad Leang stopped his movements and laughed. "Third sister, didn't you say you were going to the library? Why are you looking for me here then?" In his heart, he still dearly loved his younger sister. Kad Kuli walked up to him with a grimace. "Second brother, did you not say you would help me teach Changyang Xiangtian a lesson?" Immediately after hearing Changyang Xiangtian, the smile on Kad Liang's face disappeared. and a gloomy expression replaced it. He had been brooding over the freshman competition for the past few days, and since he had been defeated by an 8th St. Force layer student in such an ugly way, Kad Liang would never forget feeling that memory. That very kick was the single memoriam of his disgrace. Kad Kuli was furious as she spoke. "Second brother, Changyang Xiangtian was in the library today. We should go over there and teach him a lesson." "Yes, of course. This time we will definitely be the winners. Come with me, third sister." Kad Liang started to walk towards the library with determination. There was no way he would admit defeat to Gian Chen. He had blamed his loss the other day due to his carelessness. It was because he had held back that he had lost to Jian Chen. This time, the high and mighty Kad Liang would not accept defeat. Kad Kuli started to show excitement. "This time, second brother must definitely give the brat Changyang Xiangtian a lesson he'll never forget," she said, as she followed him to the library. Even though the two of them were both at the 9th layer of St. Force, she knew that she was still no match for her older brother. And if Kad Liang were to lose against Changyang Xiangtian, then there would be no way she would be able to win. At the library, Gian Chen was still deeply engrossed with his book. "Hello? Do you mind if I sit down here?" At this moment, a crisp voice came from the side of Gian Chen. Although he was deeply engrossed in his book, Gian Chen's soul was formidably strong and brought him back to awareness. Reflexively turning his head, Gian Chen saw a 17, 18-year-old female standing right next to him. She wore an academy uniform and had long black hair cascading down her shoulders. She had a refined but kind smile, with eyes that looked curiously at Gian Chen. With her cherry-red lips, there were people who were practically fighting each other to get closer to her. Although she was only 17, 18, her body was so delicately refined that the academy uniform nicely accentuated her. Currently, the girl was hugging a thick book close to her. Jian Chen casually looked at her before turning around to look around the room. He hadn't realized that all of the tables were so full that not a single spot was left to sit down. Looking back to the beautiful female, Jian Chen answered, "Go ahead." Returning his eyes back to his book, he didn't bother to look at her even though she was so pretty. The girl looked at the engrossed Jian Chen with a strange look. Her eyes shined with a peculiar look as she sat down. "Thank you," she said gently. Her voice was gentle-sounding. Anyone who heard her talk would feel comforted. Jian Chen didn't hear her words, however, as he was already too absorbed in reading his book again. In his eyes, he could only see the book. The girl looked at Jian Chen with curiosity again, but she didn't say anything, and sat down with her book she was holding. She looked graceful as she slowly thumbed through her book, even though it was such a simple action. This gracefulness was an inherent talent of a noble and suited her well. The library was very peaceful. Even though there weren't that many people, none of them made a sound as they concentrated on their respective books. At that moment, a male and a female student came through the gates of the library. It was the siblings, Kad Liang and Kad Kuli. "Second brother, look, he's right over there." Kad Kuli pointed at Jian Chen. Kad Liang looked to where Kad Kuli was pointing, and sure enough, he saw the all-too-familiar body figure. He looked on with disdain as he advanced towards him with his head held high and an arrogant face. With his head high and chest out, he walked towards Jian Chen with Kad Kuli closely trailing behind. "Ping!" The moment Kad Liang got to the table Jian Chen was at, he slammed his hand onto the table, causing a large sound to echo out into the previously silent room. The sudden noise attracted the attentions of all the people reading, and their gazes all moved away from their books. One by one, they began to observe Jian Chen's table. Aside from a few people furrowing their brows, most people carried amused expressions. Jian Chen knit his brows and slowly lifted his head. He looked straight at Kad Liang and said heavily with a hint of anger, "What are you doing?" At this moment, even the girl sitting across from Jian Chen had furrowed her brows, and she looked at Kad Liang in annoyance, her face also carrying hints of anger. The sudden loud noise by her ear had scared her while she was peacefully absorbed in reading her book. Kad Liang looked at Jian Chen with contempt and haughtily said, "Changyang Xiangtian, I, Kad Liang, formally want to request a duel. Do you dare to accept? Kad Liang's voice resonated through the entire first floor of the library, as if he were afraid nobody would be able to hear it. Duel! Gian Chen's face showed a hint of disdain, and he lightly snorted. I'm not interested, so please leave this area immediately. Don't disturb my reading. I don't have the luxury of wasting time on you. Realizing that Gian Chen was not seeing him as his equal, Kad Liang's eyes flashed with anger. Glaring at Gian Chen, he ground his teeth and forcefully squeezed out the words, Do you dare to or not? Chapter 20. Challenge. Jian Chen couldn't help but feel fury from Kad Liang's arrogance. Holding his own head up to look at him with disdain, Jian Chen said, You were defeated by me before. What right do you have to demand a challenge from me? Even now, Jian Chen's own tone carried a hint of arrogance that he had carried over from his previous world. This was a habitual attitude that somehow came out by accident. Hearing Jian Chen's words, Kad Liang's handsome face went deathly white. Extreme anger flashed through his eyes, but he didn't dare to break the pacifistic rules of the library. Otherwise, he would have long since attacked Gian Chen. Even Kad Kuli, who was standing by her brother's side, was indignant. Glaring at Gian Chen, she started to jeer. Humph, you won't even accept my brother's challenge to a duel. What kind of man are you? Hearing Kad Kuli back him up, Kad Liang's eyes brightened up and felt re-energized. That's right. Not accepting a duel, that's what a coward does. Changyang Xiangtian, I'll be waiting for you at the fighting arena. If you admit that you're a coward, then don't come. Third sister, let's go to the arena. After that, Kad Liang glared at Jian Chen before turning around to exit the library. Changyang Xiangtian, you better come. You're a coward if you don't show up. Kad Kuli cried out as she followed her brother. Changyang Xiangtian? Isn't that the new freshman ruler from the competition? Seems about right. I heard that Changyang Xiangtian is at the 8th Saint Force layer, but he ended up beating several students who were a layer higher. How amazing. After Kad Kuli left, the entire library started to buzz with comments. Everyone was starting to comment about the freshman ruler, Changyang Xiangtian. Even the girl who was sitting next to Jian Chen had a small look of astonishment as she looked at him. Her eyes were blinking rapidly from this development, and it was clear to see that she had not expected Jian Chen to be the freshman ruler. Jian Chen slowly clasped shut the book in his hand, with a face that was unsightly to see. After the two siblings from the Kad clan disturbed him, he was no longer in the mood to read. Plus, Jian Chen had no other choice but to accept the challenge after it was issued. Otherwise, the entire academy would look down on him. Although Jian Chen didn't really care about his own reputation, he was one of the symbols of the Changyang clan. Since his older brother wasn't around, he would have to take up the challenge himself to make sure the Changyang clan didn't get sullied. At the same time, Jian Chen didn't want Changyang Hu to be ridiculed for having such a cowardly brother. Slowly standing up from his chair, he grabbed the few books he had with him and returned them to the bookshelf. After the books were neatly shelved, Jian Chen began to walk out of the library. At that moment, the entire library watched Jian Chen's movements. Hey, Changyang Xiangtian! As Jian Chen reached the gates of the library, the female who was sitting next to him called out to him. Turning around in surprise, Jian Chen looked at the beautiful girl with an even look. Yes? Hearing the even tone in his voice, the girl couldn't help but pout, but she didn't say anything and instead walked up to Jian Chen and said, Changyang Xiangtian, are you really going to accept his challenge at the arena? Of course, Jian Chen nodded. You don't actually have to accept his challenge at all. The library banned any sort of loud noises, so those people have already violated the rules imposed by the academy. You could just go and report this to the headmaster, and he'll definitely penalize those two. In Carath Academy, no one has ever dared to go against the headmaster's command, the girl said. Hearing these words, Jian Chen started to look at the girl in a better light. With a light laugh, he said, They've already issued the challenge, so I have to accept. After saying that, he said no more and left the library. As the girl watched Jian Chen's figure disappear, her eyes quickly flashed. After some hesitation, She immediately ran to the table she had been sitting to return the thick book she had been reading back to the shelves, and ran out of the library towards the martial arts arena. After the girl left, the entire library was silent for a moment. Suddenly, a loud voice rang out, "There's another interesting scene to watch. A freshman at the 8th St. Force layer is battling against a person at the 9th St. Force layer. Anyone who doesn't watch it would be a fool," a male in his teens wearing the school uniform said as he directly ran out of the library. After both these people had left, the few other students that had been reading in the library also returned the books in their hands to the shelves and left the library one after another, running towards the martial arts arena. The school's martial arts arena was constructed in a corner of the sports field. Within it, there were 5 circular platforms, each one being approximately 20 meters in diameter. However, the insides of the martial arts arena was not that large and could only comfortably fit 100 spectators. Otherwise, the freshman martial arts competition a few days ago wouldn't have been held at the temporarily modified stages on the sports field. When Gian Chen arrived at the martial arts arena, he only saw Kad Kuli standing on one of the platforms with his arms crossed, with an arrogant expression on his face. Standing below the platform were Kad Kuli and a few other students wearing the academy uniforms, who were all absorbed in deep discussions. Seeing Gian Chen arriving from the distance, Kad Leang, who was standing on the platform, sneered at him and shouted, "And here I had thought that you were a coward and had not dared to come." "Humph!" Jian Chen snorted in disdain and directly jumped onto the platform. He stood on the platform with his arms crossed and coldly replied, "Come at me. I'll allow you to attack me 10 times. During these 10 attacks, I will not retaliate." Hearing Gian Chen's arrogant words, the spectators below the platform began to cry out in shock and began to talk amongst themselves in low voices. There were many elder students amid the spectators, and amongst them, quite a few did not have positive opinions about Gian Chen. They believed that during the freshman martial arts competition, the only reason why Jian Chen had defeated Kad Kuli was because Kad Kuli had been too careless. Kad Kuli's eye glinted with anger. Anyone could tell that Jian Chen's words meant that he did not see Kad Kuli as his equal. "Changyang Xiang Tian, you're even more savage than I had thought," Kad Kuli said forcefully. Jian Chen looked indifferently at Kad Kuli and replied, "If you want to fight, then hurry up. I don't have the time to waste on you." "Humph!" Kad Kuli grunted and sneered. "Why are you so rushed? Let's wait until everyone gathers here. I want everyone to witness the moment I defeat you." Because he had lost last time during the freshman martial arts competition, Kad Kuli had been brooding over it for a while, especially since Jian Chen had even kicked him in the butt. To him, this was an unforgettable humiliation. In Kad Kuli's opinion, he always felt that the only reason he had lost to Jian Chen was because he had been too careless. Thus, he wanted to take this chance to regain the face that he had previously lost, and aimed to ruthlessly humiliate Jian Chen in return. Gradually, the people surrounding the martial arts arena increased, and the population did not cease to increase either. From the distance, there were still many students heading towards the arena. This match had obviously been announced to the public by Kad Kuli. After only a short while had passed, the martial arts arena was packed with 200 or so people. Nearly everyone was excited to watch the lively scene. Amongst these people, Kad Kuli's older brother, Kad Yun, also stood there, with a few people around his age standing next to him. "Fourth brother, you can do it. Big brother is watching you." Suddenly, a familiar deep sound mixed amongst the other noises was clearly transmitted to the platform. Hearing this, Jian Chen turned around and saw his older brother Changyang Hu standing beneath the platform cheering for him. Jian Chen smiled and wordlessly nodded his head at Changyang Hu. At that moment, someone banged on the table and shouted, "Let's make bets! Whoever wants to wager on the fight, come here!" I bet on Kad Kuli, 10 gold coins. I bet on Changyang Xiang Tian, 20 gold coins. 50 gold coins on Kad Kuli. People gradually started to gamble on the outcome of the match between Jian Chen and Kad Kuli. Even those who usually attended class had came along with many nobles. Money was of no issue to them, so there were many people betting from 10 gold coins to 10 purple coins. Around 80% of the gamblers were betting on Kad Kuli, and only 20% were betting on Jian Chen. 10 purple coins on Changyang Xiang Tian. Changyang Hu slammed down the appropriate amount of coins onto the table. "I'll bet on Changyang Xiangtian as well. 10 purple coins." Behind Changyang Xiangtian, a soft and gentle voice spoke. It was the girl from the library who sat next to Gian Chen. She was obviously from a big clan. With every word she spoke, her tone was filled with a grandeur sound that sounded natural to her. After the girl had bet 10 purple coins on Changyang Xiangtian, everyone else started to show expressions of surprise. Changyang Hu was the older brother of Changyang Xiangtian, so his bet was easy to understand. However, this girl did not hesitate at all when she wagered her money. Despite their shock, however, no student voiced out their questions. On the platform, Jian Chen looked at Kad Liang with a strange expression and said, "We can start now, right?" Kad Liang held an expression filled with self-confidence, and he sneered, "Changyang Xiangtian, you personally declared that you would allow me to attack 10 times. You'd better not go back on your words. A nobleman's word is his bond. Just give me all you've got," Jian Chen replied. TL. He uses a proverb to say this. How arrogant! Although Kad Liang didn't quite understand the fancy proverb Jian Chen had said, but he could roughly guess the meaning of it. Without another word, he dashed at Jian Chen to start the fight. Since Jian Chen had allowed him 10 moves, he wouldn't hold back and unleash his strongest moves. Kad Liang quickly rushed in front of Jian Chen and struck out with his fist that traveled through the air so fast, a whistling sound could be heard. Faced with the fist, Jian Chen only took a single step back and allowed the fist to stop short of him before it could make contact. How close. Just a bit more and he would have been hit. This Changyang Xiangtian can't be too powerful. As soon as the duel started, he was almost hit. If any of those punches connect, I'm afraid that he won't get off with just some minor damages, and the victor would already be clear. This Changyang Xiangtian's luck is quite good to have dodged it like that. Everyone under the arena had thought that Jian Chen was merely lucky to have dodged Kad Liang's fist, and so only a few observers had realized the truth, causing them to start to look at Jian Chen in a new light.